There is a clip circulating right now that is doing something unusual for the internet. It is not messy. It is not a clapback. Nobody is crying. Nobody is shading. ASAP Rocky is mid-concert. The bass of Hella Hoes just hit. And before he performs a single bar, he turns toward Rihanna, who is standing front row at his Don't Be Dumb tour, and says directly into the mic, "Yo, babe, this song is old as hell. This song is like 15 years old. All right, I ain't got hoes no more."
Yo, babe, this song is old as hell, alright, babe? This song is like 15 years old.
Crowd lost it. The internet lost it more. And if you looked at that moment and thought, this is just cute couple content, you completely missed what that 30-second clip was actually doing. Hella Hoes was released by the ASAP Mob Collective in 2012. Rocky was 24. He was not yet the Harlem fashion icon who descends from helicopters wearing diamond earrings the size of walnuts. He was a kid from 8th Avenue who had just dropped a mixtape, Live Love, ASAP, and was being talked about in the same sentence as Kendrick Lamar and Kid Cudi. The song was a product of a very specific era, not just of his career, but of who he presented himself to be. And the fact that he now has to stop a concert to clarify that his 2012 content is outdated information says more about the compressed timeline of his transformation than anything a biopic could. The Don't Be Dumb tour launched on May 27, 2026 at the United Center in Chicago, his first headlining arena run since 2019's Injured Generation tour, and only his second ever. That 7-year gap between headline tours is not nothing. In between those two tours, Rocky got arrested, publicly tried on 2 felony assault counts in Los Angeles stemming from a 2021 shooting incident involving a former collaborator, and was acquitted. He also fathered 3 children. Released an album in January 2026 that Rolling Stone called Slick and Overstuffed, with cover artwork designed by Tim Burton and cameos from Danny Elfman and Damon Albarn of Gorillaz. Launched a world tour supported by Live Nation and Cash App, and got named CFDA Fashion Icon in November 2025. The same award Rihanna won in 2014, handed to him by Anna Wintour, who had handed it to Rihanna over a decade before. That is a different man than the one on Hella Hoes, and he knows it. That is the point. The clip from the concert is not just wholesome content for people who root for them as a couple. It functions as a public teep. Rocky is not performing Hella Hoes and quietly hoping Rihanna doesn't connect the dots. He is literally narrating the distance between who he was and who he is now, in real time, into a microphone with her watching from 5 feet away. There's confidence in that. There's also something slightly calculated about it in the best possible way. He is managing the narrative before the narrative manages him. Because here is the thing that people forget. Rihanna's relationship with Rocky's past image has always been a conversation. When they first collaborated publicly, it was the 2012 MTV VMAs, performing Cockiness together on stage. A year later, he put her in the music video for Fashion Killa, his 2013 track from Long Live ASAP. That is essentially an encyclopedic flex of designer knowledge, dropping Prada, Dolce & Gabbana, and Balenciaga in the bars, while Rihanna walked alongside him, looking like she owned every label he name-checked. She raps. He even wrote the line, "Her attitude Rihanna/she get it from her mama," into the song. And they were, by every account at the time, just friends. That video was the first music video ever directed by Virgil Abloh. It was not a coincidence that he chose Rihanna. That was Rocky and Rihanna. Before they were Rocky and Rihanna, building a shared visual identity that the fashion world would later spend years trying to decode. The video was shot in 2013. They did not confirm a relationship until late 2020. 7 years of proximity. 7 years of fashion weeks, adjacent front rows, the 2018 Louis Vuitton menswear show in Paris. where they sat beside each other and somehow the internet still wasn't sure. As Rihanna herself told Interview magazine about that stretch, "I wore his designs. He came to my launches." If the hella hose moment is Rocky publicly drawing a line between the old version of himself and the present, the Paris outing with baby Rocky is where that line gets its exclamation point. In early April 2026, photos emerged from the streets of Paris. Rihanna cradling their daughter Rocky Irish Mayers, born September 13th, 2025, in a head-to-toe vintage Dior look. We are talking a gray pleated Dior dress layered over jeans and a vintage green and black knit hat that was originally designed by John Galliano in 2002. For a 6-month-old, one shoe was missing, which somehow made it more perfect. Rihanna was in a Carhartt hat and a Prada striped polo, carrying what Page 6 described as her Dracula Dior tote. Rocky was holding their eldest son, RZA, wearing a flashy blazer. Because of course, he was. Family was in Paris because they had not been back to Los Angeles since their mansion was shot up on March 8, 2026. That is not a rumor or a tabloid embellishment. The Los Angeles Police Department confirmed to the Los Angeles Times that a bullet had penetrated the walls of the property. Nobody was hurt, but Rihanna, Rocky, and their 3 children, RZA, Riot, and Rocky, were not in that house, and they had not returned to LA since, so the Paris pop-outs were not vacation content. They were a family in temporary relocation, doing the most Rihanna and Rocky thing imaginable with the circumstances, dressing extraordinarily well and letting the paparazzi come to them. But here is what that Rocky outing actually was. Beyond the aesthetic, it was the first time the public got a street-level look at their daughter. Rihanna had announced the birth on Instagram on September 24, 2025, with a photo of herself holding a newborn while a pair of pink boxing gloves hung in the frame. That was it. No name, no face. The name, Rocky Irish Mayers, came with the caption. The internet filled the gap with speculation about what the baby looked like, whose features she had inherited, whether she would be the girl Rocky had been openly wishing for since the 3rd pregnancy was announced at the 2025 Met Gala. In a September 2025 Elle interview, he had said, "I hope it's a girl. I really do. We're praying for a girl. I feel like it's going to be a girl." This pregnancy is so different from the other 2. She was born before that interview published. He already knew when he said it, and he said it anyway, either because the timing of publication was outside his control, or because the wanting felt true regardless of the outcome. So when Rocky showed up in Paris in a 2002 John Galliano hat, it was the first real confirmation of everything people had been guessing for 7 months. And fans immediately did the thing fans do. They compared her to her mother. The comment sections filled with mini Riri and debates about whose nose, whose eyes, whose jawline. Rihanna's face is interesting, given that Rihanna spent years being told she looked like she could be Rocky's mother in paparazzi shots. A recurring and annoying internet observation that the couple has never publicly dignified. Fashion dimension here is not incidental, and it would be easy to slide past it. Rihanna became Dior's first black female ambassador in 2015. Rocky became the first person of color to front Dior Homme in 2016. 2 firsts for the same house in consecutive years before they were a couple. And when their daughter made her first public appearance, she did it in vintage Dior. That is, 3 generations of the same luxury relationship playing out across a decade. The choice of the Galliano-era 2002 hat specifically, not current season, not gifted collaborations, but archival, signals that someone in that household is thinking about fashion historically, not just aesthetically. The hat predates Rocky's parents' fame. It predates Rihanna's Dior deal by 13 years. Putting it on an infant is either the most naturally fashion-conscious thing imaginable or the most carefully considered. Possibly both. Then there is the W magazine cover. In April 2026, Rihanna and Rocky appeared on the cover of W magazine's Pop issue, both in matching Dior haute couture. Rihanna in a coat and lilac hat, Cartier collection necklace with purple gemstones. Rocky in a Dior haute couture diaper and a white headpiece. The W issue featured stories from Mariah Carey, SCA, and Mary J. Blige celebrating Rihanna. This was not just a fashion editorial. It was a formal cultural introduction of a child who had already been photographed on Paris streets, but had not yet entered the machine of intentional media positioning. The cover put Rocky in that machine. At 6 months old, she has a magazine cover. She has an archival designer look. She has Lil Fashion Killa written under her photos by fans who understand exactly whose lineage they are watching. That nickname is not random. Fashion Killa is her father's song, the one with her mother in the video, shot by Virgil Abloh, released in 2013, 13 years before Rocky was born. The fans calling her a Fashion Killa are not just reacting to cute baby photos. They are completing a circle that started before this child existed, in a music video where two people who insisted they were just friends walked through designer boutiques together, looking like they were inevitable. Which brings everything back to the concert clip, because Hella Hoes and Fashion Killa are from the same period, 2012, 2013. The early years of Rocky's career, when his public image was split between fashion-forward Harlem rap and fairly blunt lyrical content about women and lifestyle. Hella Hoes got performed at concerts because it is genuinely a crowd song, a collaborative ASAP mob track with Ferg, Nast, and 12E. It still works live. The energy is real. The fact that it remains in his setlist on the Don't Be Dumb tour is its own kind of honesty. He is not pretending that version of him did not exist. He is just contextualizing it. That is different from erasing it, and the distinction matters. What the clip actually shows is Rocky doing real-time reputation management with the most disarming tool available: transparency delivered as humor. He is not apologizing for the song. He is not skipping it. He is simply noting, for Rihanna specifically, that the content predates her. Crowd finds it funny because the gap between who he was in 2012 and who he is now, standing in an arena next to his partner and the mother of his 3 children, is genuinely wide. Wide enough that the song itself becomes a historical artifact more than a statement of character. That framing also does something useful for Rihanna, who has spent years being the person people measured against Rocky's past. She was at the trial every day he sat in that Los Angeles courtroom. She was photographed at the 2025 Rolling Loud California performance in March, his first concert since the acquittal, descended from a helicopter with "Don't Be Dumb" emblazoned on its side. She showed up to his CFDA Fashion Icon Award in November 2025, weeks after giving birth, wearing alaya, and told the Associated Press on the red carpet, "I chose right. I got good taste." She has been making the same argument Rocky made at that concert, that who he is now is the relevant version, but in a different register and without saying so explicitly. By the time Rocky appeared in Paris in that Galliano hat, carried by a woman whose own Dior history stretches back 11 years, the argument was no longer even really about Rocky's past. The family had become the statement. 3 children with names that all begin with R, each one introduced to the public in a way that felt both deliberate and somehow genuine. RZA photographed during a birthday celebration in New York in May 2025, Riot making his first official appearance at Rocky's AWGE menswear show during Paris Fashion Week in June 2025, while Rihanna was visibly pregnant in front row, and Rocky, 6 months later, nuzzled against her mother's shoulder in a 23-year-old hat on a Paris street. Public narrative around Rocky and Rihanna has always been partly about redemption, whether the word gets used or not. His from the legal weight of the trial, from the long gap between albums, from an image that was built in one decade being tested in another. hers, from years of speculation about when the album was coming, whether she had stepped back too far from music for the return to land, what motherhood at this scale meant for someone who had been a global pop superstar since she was 17. In a February 2025 interview with Harper's Bazaar, she said she felt she had finally cracked it regarding the new album, as of this writing. But she keeps showing up for the tour, for the press, for the children's public introductions, in a way that reads less like a woman waiting to be ready and more like someone who is very clearly already living the life she chose. The 30 seconds of Rocky turning to Rihanna before Hella Hoes happened to be funny, but it was also a man on a stage on the biggest tour of his career, in front of thousands of people, pausing to acknowledge that his partner was watching, that his history was playing, and that there was enough distance between them that he could afford to laugh. That is what makes it more than a couple's moment. It is a measure of how much has changed for him, for them, for the daughter now wearing archival couture in Paris. The fashion killer raised a fashion killer. The man who once cataloged designers in his bars is now the CFDA fashion icon, and the Hella Hose era is, by his own admission and with his own mic, 15 years old. Which means every photo of Rocky Irish mayors in a vintage Galliano hat is in some way a rewrite of the origin story, not because the old one was wrong, but because this was always where it was going.